Good morning. My name is Joyce Hunter, and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology. And we have a fantastic panel of women, yay, on this panel for the epilogue of our series today. We have Sherry Bennett from DLT, Janet Vogel from HHS, Jyothi Dugar from NIH, and Venus Goodwine from USDA. So we'll start by having each one of them tell you a little bit about themselves and how they got into the CISO role. And we'll start with Sherry.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Bennett. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at DLT, tech data company. I've been with DLT about 2.5 years. My prior experience actually is serving as Chief Data Officer in higher education institutions. And before that, I was actually a professor at Rice University. And I got into this role really through the data lens. I work a lot with data, always have. My training is a behavioral scientist. And I sort of work closely with my CISO colleagues, thinking about all the different types of data now that we are able to leverage and really building robust cybersecurity programs. My love and passion is data, and there's a lot to use now and create with all the different technologies and stuff. And so that's how I got into it in the last few years.
Okay, Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Vogel, and I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer for Health and Human Services. And I've been in the IT world for many years in the office of the CIO, and had the opportunity to expand my interest in cybersecurity by becoming the HHS CISO. And I think all things IT, and everything that I do, and I eat, breathe, and sleep IT, and now cybersecurity. So I look forward to sharing some of those experiences here. Thank you for having me, Joyce.
You're welcome. Venus?
Hi, so good morning. So I'm excited in how I got into IT. I actually started my career in the Intel community and was introduced, one of my mentors was a CIO, and I became interested in that, and I joined the military, and it kind of put me on that path to IT. And so when I left active duty and joined the reserves, I was a IT officer. And so as that part of my career started to make changes from IT to cybersecurity, so did my civilian career. So I've really had this parallel career for the past 30 years with being a military member as well as a federal civilian employee. And so my goal is to be a CIO, and of course, understand cybersecurity is a key component of being a CIO. And so as I've started to hone in on some of those competencies, I ended up at USDA working for Mr. Washington as a CISO, and I'm having a blast.
All right. Jyothi.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really thrilled and amazed to be part of this beautiful panel, as well as, with all these amazing women. So my path was a little different. I actually wanted to be a doctor growing up, and my main purpose was to actually help people. And I came to find out pretty soon after I actually got into med school and I did a couple years there that, I could actually help people in other ways besides being a doctor. So I shifted focus completely to a totally different world of electrical engineering. And I ended up graduating in that. Yeah, very different, very different. Don't believe your parents when they tell you they're going to help you with your homework. It didn't happen. Especially when there was a huge difference between analog days and digital days. Yeah, I fell for that trap. And
Okay.
But I did that, and I really never used it because when I graduated, I took a traveling job being a consultant for Ernst & Young. So I lived in Europe for a year. I lived in Canada for a year. I traveled the world for several years until I decided, like, yeah, I'm starting to kind of get the the bug to just kind of stay in one place at one time, which is how I actually got into cybersecurity. I had a mentor as well, which was wonderful. And this was about 20 years ago when cyber wasn't really cyber. It was kind of like other duties as assigned, and then became like information assurance, and then it became cyber. So I kind of continued along that path. I thought I would break out and do something else within a couple years, but here I am 20 years later being a CISO at the NIH-CIT. So I feel like Sherry's passion is data. My passion is still and continues to be people. So I really bring in the people-centric approach to pretty much everything I do, including cyber.
Excellent, wonderful. So this final panel is the epilogue of our series, and we will examine the holistic approaches to cybersecurity strategy, which can be obtained by mixing integrated security methods, impactful employee upskilling, reskilling, robust infrastructure, best risk analysis programs, effective policies, and building a culture of cybersecurity as a shared responsibility. So when we say holistic, a lot of people start going, oh, holistic, kind of squishy, mushy, touchy feely. What are you talking about? When you're talking about holistic. Jyoti, what is your definition of holistic cybersecurity?
My definition of holistic is holistic. So it's like the whole person, the whole organization, and everything that we do all combined together. So when we talk about from a wellness perspective, since I'm also in the wellness industry, when you say functional or holistic approach, it means mind, body, energy, the person at a 360-degree level, not just at the superficial level, not just taking care of the symptoms that the person has. So similarly in cybersecurity, we tend to follow that same approach. We're most of the time we're trying to tackle things at the superficial level, trying to put band-aid fixes on it. So in lieu of that, if we look at it from a holistic standpoint, people, process, technology, and there's a reason why people is the number one thing that we need to look at, empowering our people with the knowledge, skills, and the tools and the resources that they need to really understand their role in security and embed security into their roles. And then from a process technique, do we have the right processes in place? And then of course tools. Oftentimes we jump directly to the tools, and then we're trying to put band-aid fixes on symptoms, kind of like what we do in the medical industry. So instead, if we look at everything from a holistic point of view, we start with the people, then we add in the processes, strategies, policies, and frameworks, and then we also look at, well, what is the purpose of the tools, and where do we need the tools, and also looking at tools from a holistic point of view as well.
Okay, great. And Janet, you've had your feet in both places, the CIO role as well as the CISO role. So tell me how holistic covers both avenues, both areas.
Well, cybersecurity and IT are so integrated, but what I want people to understand is that cybersecurity isn't one thing, it's everything, and it's in everything we do. And because we're so connected right now in so many ways, that we really need to think about this as a part of our daily life and our concerns. So we're trying to make sure cybersecurity is a part of everything in IT. And outreach is really important. Cybersecurity Awareness Month is really a good opportunity for us to get the word out. And we do that sometimes with the CIO and the CISO communities in our department. We share all of that information because we want to make sure the word gets out. We want to make sure people are as aware as possible that it's not that, for example, insider threat. makes you think of some person in a dark room doing something bad. I think we need to change that so that we understand we are the risk. You and I are the ones that are going to open that phishing email that could cause a problem. So we're a risk, and we have to understand we are the target. So whatever we do in implementing a new IT system, we address the cybersecurity up front, and then we look at the impact on the people, the process, and the technology. So integrating them is very important.
Okay. Venus, tell me about USDA in taking in what Jyoti said and what Janet said about we're all in this together. How do you approach the holistic approach to cybersecurity at USDA?
Well, thank you. And yes, and I agree with my colleagues. So one thing, my mantra has always been that business drives cybersecurity. And so in that, just as we've seen, we could not have moved to a remote telework, this remote posture or to this full-time telework without IT. And so my job as a CISO is secure IT. And so in doing that, education was key for us at USDA. As you know, we're broadly distributed, 4,500 locations around the world, CONUS and overseas. And so we had to quickly educate because everyone was not telework ready and everyone had not experienced telework. So first we had to educate them on here are the remote capabilities that you can use while you telework from home. And here's how to do it securely. We even gave them one-pagers on this is how to make sure that your home Wi-Fi is secure now that my asset's going to connect to your home network. And now my perimeter is in all the homes of all the over 100,000 USDA's employees. So that was very important that we did that. And most important as well was making sure that they understood that that help desk infrastructure that they were used to when they were in the building was still available to them when they were at home. They could still call and get assistance when they needed it and they weren't at home while they were at home. And then realizing too that this was a different kind of telework, right? Because of the issue to being a pandemic, there was some anxiousness within our employees because of the uncertainty. And so we recognized that some of them are going to be distracted in ways because their families were at home, their spouses, their children. And so thinking about all that, we had to constantly communicate and be in touch and remind them of that you don't print. Do not send your work email to your Gmail account so that you can print. So we gave them capabilities of DocuSign and things like that. And then really just constantly reminding them about the cybersecurity threats of working at home. And because now the threat actor knows that we're at home as well. So we just had to be very vigilant. And so that's kind of the approach that we took and I share with my colleagues as well.
Okay. Sherry, so where does data come into all of this? How does data inform the general population at large? I know some companies are talking about behavioral analytics as a part of cybersecurity. So how does data get involved in all of this?
Yeah, no, great question. The early on and sort of like advanced data analytics within cyber is looking at audit logs, and people are like, well, okay, who's logging in, who's logging out, and the amount of information now that we have at our disposal, it's in a lot of different varieties, documents, voice, video, so many different types of information now we can bring to bear besides something like an audit log. From a behavior perspective and thinking a little bit, building on what Janet and Venus and Jyoti said, within an agency, there's a lot of different people and different roles. With COVID now working from home, we have some new threats. But when I think about holistically, and especially from a behavioral data science perspective, I think, from threat intelligence, what is it kind of globally that we need to be aware of? Because there are threats definitely with each of us, and being engaged in a phishing activity within an agency across, the entire organization, but we need to think about what the enemy is thinking about from a holistic perspective as well, in terms of, political events that are going on, the cultures within an organization or a country more generally. Like right now, the political environment in the United States, and with COVID going on, there are new attempts that our enemies thinking about on how to exploit those vulnerabilities. And I won't go into too many details what those are. We don't want to help anybody, but it's just there's so many different pieces that we need to think about thinking about how the enemy thinks about how to tap into our vulnerabilities, and then how they create opportunities out of that. So, a lot's been written recently about supply chain, for example. So, somebody could come across a food order for a large event at Fort Briggs, and somebody will, could look at that and say, hey, what's going on there? Who's in command at that base? Who's going to be on that base at that time? And look at what type of arsenals are there. And so there's just, so many different little things that people can look at and exploit, and the data that they can bring to bear to analyze that and help them, create something is very different now, especially over the last, 5 to 10 years, and the tools that they have at their disposal. So.
Thank you very much. And feel free to ask each other questions. I don't want to be the one always asking questions. But let's talk about engagement. I know when I was the deputy CIO, and I hated taking those compliance, the self-run, self-taught kinds of things. Janet, what do you do to engage your people to see cybersecurity as fun, not boring?
So I think you hit on something, Joyce. It's really important. Seeing it as fun really does bring people in to the learning opportunities. And one of the things that we've done is try and make our training more experiential. So we did move forward with a learning opportunity that was an escape room. And so if you've ever gone to an escape room, which I highly recommend, totally fun. So that's one of the training opportunities that we brought in so that people could experience the whole question and answer and awareness. So that is one thing that we've been doing, little bit difficult with telework. So we're changing that to a virtual experience. And I know, Dennis, you're doing a very similar thing, and we can compare notes and share. Another thing we do is our outreach. We actually put some regular communications out, and we'll add something like a cybersecurity based crossword puzzle. One thing, another thing that we did was and this will sound very unusual, we did a haiku contest about cybersecurity. And a lot of good, really good contributions to that. And then another thing that we did was we put a cartoon, and we asked people to suggest what the message or the wording would be that describes it related to cybersecurity. So in this case, it was a couple of dinosaurs with holding top hats. And so we gave a prize to the winner, and that really draws people in. they learn something, we get our message out, and they have fun doing it. So I think they're starting to look forward to the learning opportunities rather than saying, oh no, let's avoid that required annual training. They're actually,
Oh, yeah.
through this effort, getting ready for that training. And we hope we can stand up to their expectations now.
And so, Joyce, if I could add on, to Janet, you're right. We too are using the virtual escape room as well, because what we realize, and in our environments, we have varying degrees of generations in our organization. And so when you get to that Gen Z, Generation Z, where they're used to gamification and learning, the virtual escape room is perfect for that, because it's adaptable the way you can take your objectives and have the escape room created to meet your objectives, so they still get credit for completing cybersecurity training. And so that's important, because if you make it that continuous, monotonous, what we were used to with CBTs, it may not be as effective for learning. I also used that same escape room this past summer when I spoke at a STEAM camp, and having to be the ability to adapt that to their level about being safe online and protecting their data when they're using social media. It was overwhelming. It was something they had not done before, and it really piqued their interest and really made them aware of how to be more safe online. And something else we did with gamification at USDA is having a cybersecurity Jeopardy as well. And so every way that you can try, as Janet said, to really vary your approach to learning, it really gets everyone excited about cybersecurity, because to try and inculcate within the organization that cybersecurity is everyone's business, you're going to have to use varying methods to do that. And you have to meet them, where they are, because maybe our older, and I don't mean age older, but a different generation may not like the gamification. So we still keep, the standard training, but we like to vary it so that we can reach multiple people in different ways.
That's great.
Yeah, that is. I like the creativity that's involved in trying to keep every person engaged in this. Jyoti, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges of our teleworking? And able to, when you're all together, you can really do a holistic approach. You can see people, you can touch people, you can walk down the hall and run into people. So what's the biggest challenge in keeping this holistic approach in a geographically dispersed organization?
Yeah, I was going to add on to a little bit on the passive, where from a wellness standpoint, when the way people associate fun is when you can use like all 5 senses in something. So that's why when you're eating something that's really nice, you're kind of using all 5 senses, your taste, and then you're kind of looking at it. But then, so when it comes to cybersecurity, it kind of works the same way. If you play a game for those that are using their experiential senses for and have something visible that's attractive or fun, or like animations and game type of thing. And then when we were live or in person, you could also use your smell and your taste, because we would always offer free food.
That's what we do too.
Food, candy, kind of the same, right? Because we didn't want to go against any government policies by offering food, but we would also, hey, play this Wheel of Fortune game and you'll get some candy, and everyone. That really drafted the masses.
That's great.
Which is kind of hard to do in the virtual environment. But I would say use as many senses as possible. Most of the time, we're almost always just using our verbal sense and just like talking, and really not using any other really sense when it comes to Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings, whatever technology we're using for meetings. So like you said, Joyce, when you're in the physical setting, you got to use all 5 senses in associating with people, because you could just walk down the hallway, talk to someone, or people approach you as you're walking down the hallway, or there's a water cooler, And what you're able to do in that moment is take a pause from whatever is going on in your mind to whatever that person is talking about. So it's almost like a break for your own mind at that point in time to really focus on what is somebody else telling you about their day or something that happened with them, or even if it's just another question. It kind of takes you away from something that might have been bothering you, or that you're really not able to release the trigger. But then in the virtual environment, you don't get that break unless you're very conscious in taking it yourself. So one thing that I've been promoting across the organization, as well as my own teams, is that you have to consciously take that break, because you're not going to get it automatically. So, really make your, meetings not the entire hour, but give yourself that last 10 minutes if you can to go take that break consciously. And it's not just bathroom breaks, it's a mental break as well, and maybe even a physical break. So get up, move around, shift your positions, look out the window, walk around in your own room if you don't have the time to go outside, or take a couple breathers, do some deep breathing, because you really do need that space so you can be fully present in the next meeting, instead of just going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting virtually. And then most people just end up sitting all day in a bad position.
Yeah. That's true. That is very, very true. And Sherry, how do you feel? What do you do to give yourself that break? Do you? I know you have teenage children, I think.
Yes? I do. Yes.
Preteens.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're right beyond this door here. And I do have some animals too. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Josie, you bring up a really good point. I think, and when we're more generally talking about, how do we do training and education, typically, and then now in this environment, you have to sort of dynamically adjust and be thinking consciously about how you deploy new strategies in terms of your training and reaching out to people and creating alignment among leadership and communicating that down to everybody about new activities that make us at risk and the type of actions that we need to take and be aware of. I feel like I'm getting more phishing scams now because I think somehow my personal computer, which is right over here, is next to my work computer, and I'm just like, maybe they're talking to each other. I don't know, but so I think a couple of things, like when we're doing meetings now, I've noticed one thing. We tend to, at least during team meetings, each week try to think of something to sort of, and Josie, you were talking about this the last time we talked, just to kind of be a little bit of an icebreaker to check in to see how people are doing, because I don't know how you guys feel, but like some weeks I'm like, yes, I'm on top of this, I feel great. And then, the next week I might just feel like, oh my gosh, the world's turning black, and I can't get that extra motivation where I can project for my family and for my colleagues and the community more generally. So I think sometimes having that personal connection, especially at least once a week with your team, is really, really critical. And I'm a bit of an introvert, but I know I do like to be around my colleagues. I get energy from them. So I know that that's one thing I really, really miss. In fact, I saw one colleague for the first time in 6 months at a lunch. We were like social distancing and we met for lunch, and it just felt so good to see him and have that really like close personal connection, even though he was 6 feet apart from me. Yeah, that's a little bit of trying to think about how to connect with people virtually in ways that you took for granted when you were in person. Mm-hmm. One thing that we do as a technology distribution company, Tech Data has a cool, we were just purchased by Tech Data, DLT was, and they have a cyber range, which is really cool. It's sort of like an on-hands practice laboratory where individuals can do some project-based training utilizing different types of techniques. So you get a view of different kind of point solutions, but you also sort of get a platform perspective as well. And that's one thing when we think about solutions, we try and think about sort of, enterprise-wide, from soup to nuts, what are different aspects to keeping your cybersecurity program safe and what all those pieces are. And we've adapted that so you can do that from a virtual perspective. But we very much look forward to, doing more of those visits with different agencies and commercial clients when this pandemic is over. So.
Great. Janet, there was a question here that came in. What can be done to adopt cybersecurity? Let's see. What can be done to adopt holistic cybersecurity strategies when resources are limited or reduced?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I see smiles. Everybody has a.
So
this is the new fiscal year, right?
It's obviously a common issue. Our budgets are getting flatlined, and especially for HHS and others, with all the activity recently, we're being asked to do more and more. So one of the things that we have an emphasis on right now is to apply machine learning to as many activities as we can. So we are trying to automate some of the things that our analysts have had to do manually in reviewing logs, reviewing emails, that type of thing. And they're practicing right now and have actually implemented some scans that are now, of course, we had to train the machine to learn this, but they're learning things faster. They're identifying more things. The scans are about 99.9% accurate now, and they give us the things that really should bubble up. So we know there's an ROI on our speed to respond. So this has really helped us. We also, we're applying it even to graphic images. So as email or something comes in, we can not only just say, oh, this is junk mail or marketing or spam, but we can look at, are there graphics that we know should not come through? So those are some of the things we're doing. I can't say we're doing less. It seems like we're doing a lot more. And we're trying to streamline everything we can, automate everything we can, and then use machine learning and eventually artificial intelligence to help us manage that increasing workload.
Yeah, Janet, that's a good point, because there's more work than we have skilled cybersecurity individuals. And so we have to be creative in our workspace. So not only you have the workforce challenge because of the limited workforce, but then we have the fiscal constraints as well. And so to your point, what we're doing as well is using RPA. We stood up a SMO just to do that, a management office to manage RPA across USDA, not just in the missionaries for their business, but really in cybersecurity as well. How many of those functions or procedures can we actually allow a bot to do for us? And because as more we're doing this digital transformation in the business and they're moving to the cloud, and then we have to make sure that all of that happens securely. And so that means we also need to teach the program offices how to budget for cybersecurity as well. And so that's another way that we address kind of the fiscal constrained environment that we're in. And something else I learned is in our toolbox, the capabilities we have, a lot of tools can do multiple things. I have an SWAM tool, but it also can patch. And so doing an inventory of what you have really in your toolbox and what can do other things is a great time to do that now. So I know we were trying to move away from the whole, the unified threat model, because you don't want a single point of failure. But now, because I know that I have, limited funding, I'm in a CR and all those things, I got to be creative with my capabilities. And so those are just some of the ways at Department of Agriculture we're doing that as well.
Great points.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, what Vina said about the tools is another way you can look at tools from a holistic point of view too, because a lot of us have gotten used to kind of throwing a bunch of tools to stop the bleeding initially, but then that's all we end up using that one tool for. Whereas if we actually really look at the tool, it can do 100 different other things. And we don't really use the 99 other parts. We only use this one part. And then we get another tool that does something very similar, but it maybe does one thing slightly different. And then we get another tool. So now we end up having 500 tools that are kind of all doing very similar things. And some of these tools might have been in place before we got there. Some of it might be other departments adding their own tools. So really looking at tools from a holistic point of view at the organizational level, but also each tool, what it does, and do we really need 20 tools that do pretty similar things, and also coming from a people perspective as well. So, as I said before, when cyber started, it was maybe 1 or 2 people doing other duties as assigned, and then it became an actual ISSO position. And then if you take the leadership route, you're now a CISO or a cyber leader. But everything kind of gets blamed on the cyber team, right? Something goes down, oh, it must be a security issue, or somebody must have patched something. So one thing that we've done is really try to embed security as a responsibility of everyone, but also really making it clear to them what is it that they can do in their position. So even if you're a clinician, you're like, well, what does cybersecurity have to do with me? Well, actually, lots of things. Before you put in that MRI scanner into the network, here's some things you should be checking off, like call your ISSO office or ensure these things are met. And scientists, researchers, administrative officers, whoever holds that credit card, before you just sign off on it, make sure has this already gone through security and privacy checks to make sure that it is something that we should be buying. So really looking at things from a holistic point of view, so it's not just the security team's job anymore. Really
if I could add on to that, I think that's really critical, and I think that just makes sound sense, and everybody needs to feel some ownership, because the risk can come at any point, right? And in an organization and amongst a group of people that are working together, and just sort of extending that a little bit, a lot of the same thing in data science and AI, skill sets for individuals that do this type of work, data engineering and things. Cybersecurity too, it's high demand career. A lot of people go into the private sector instead of government. And so I think we have to be a little creative in thinking about, who gets involved in it, right? And so you can't just, to Jyoti's point, everybody in the organization, it's their responsibility. But I think too, you have to give opportunities to people who maybe think outside the box. They don't have those technical skills, but going back to sort of that holistic notion of threat intelligence and how risk can come from anything, culture, societal things, what's ever going on in politics, right? A lot of folks with liberal arts degrees or some non-traditional degree, they have the propensity to think maybe more like a behavioral scientist, right? And think of things in their daily life that they could apply to this concept of security in the cyber realm. So I think there's a lot of a lot of creativity that can come from using the capital assets, if you will, the intelligence from people across your organization to really see what they can bring to the picture. And we throw little workshops and brainstorm as part of our training at DLT to get people to think just, in their job, you know, where are the threats in your job? If you were somebody trying to get in the organization, you know, from your experiences in life, what would you think of? And you get some really, really interesting conversations started, and it's a lot of fun, and people are connecting. So I know, you know, we have to start getting creative in how we resource, that's for sure, because these threats aren't going away. They're growing in numbers, and there's only so many people that you can throw at a problem, right? So.
Mhm.
And I'd like to add to that, good points, Sherry. What we're finding is this is a big opportunity, and it's a time of invention and reinvention, where those ideas from the outside make us think differently, make us approach things differently. We have to think ahead of our problems, and cybersecurity is one. I mean, that is a skill that that you have to have, but we also have to reach out and get those ideas from people that we might not have in the past, and take this opportunity to change how we do things, change our thinking, and bring everybody up to speed. So I really look at the current environment as a great opportunity. Let's do stuff that's new. Let's do all kinds of the things that we have to do. Let's do them in a new way. So if you like a challenge, this is the time to sign up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm one of those who did not have a technical degree, but behavioral science. I have an undergraduate degree in sociology and an MBA in marketing. You know, who knew, you know, that I would end up in IT? Not me, that's for sure. I thought I was going to be a market researcher, and you know, so
it's interesting how you're saying that you kind of got into this topic, and that that's one of the things that I'd like us to do more of, is reach out to other people and do it maybe at a younger age than, you know, just hiring an expert, and to help them come along. I think about myself, you know, this started a long time ago. You know, I blame Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, and everything. I love mysteries and puzzles and solving things. And cybersecurity is something like that. That, you know, at one point I thought, I want to be a doctor. And then I was like, no, I want to be a private investigator. Well, you know, who knew? Many years later, here I am in cybersecurity. Right. It seems like it came together. So it is reaching out and tapping into those things if people like gamification and challenges and puzzles. There are a lot of things that we can do right now to start encouraging more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's important, because we typically think of IT and cyber, we go straight to the technical skills, but there are a lot of soft skills required to be successful in IT and cyber: negotiation skills, communication skills, problem solving, analytics, right? And even more so in this environment, in the COVID environment, we even have to tap into other skills: empathy, compassion, flexibility. And so in this time, I think it really shines. And as a leader, we typically wouldn't talk, you know, 3 or 4 levels down to our individuals. But now we have to, because we have to know how they're feeling and how they're affected about their environment. And one of the things we talked about first, you know, I know at USDA, was act as if you're still going to work. Get up every day, same time, shower, have your coffee, get dressed. Carve out that space in your home that's your workspace, because you want to make a distinction between work and home, so that work does not consume your life. Having that work-life balance is important. And as a leader, if we show that to them as well and talk about how we do that. I actually did a town hall, and I was sharing with my team how COVID affected my family. You know, I have 2 daughters that owned a business, and their business shut down. They were affected. My son was in his high school year, you know. And so when I started to share and show that transparency transparency, then they started to share with me as well. And on that call, we were sharing amongst ourselves, the effect and the positive feedback from that was, they really got one. I see my CISO as a real person now, right? Because they just think you're just a CISO and you're just, securing things, but we were affected. So I think that transparency was important in really kind of helping them make those boundaries. I love every time I hear Jyoti talk, it talks about that holistic person and having those boundaries. And to your point, Janet, we don't have to just focus on the technical skills because we can teach those. We need some of these other soft skills and analytic skills. And as Sherry was talking about, the behavior skills in order to build the workforce of the future. I think that's important.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, I mean, that is the some parts of leadership that often goes missing or is not talked about is the other side. And it's really not a soft skill. I know there's, I don't even know why it was called soft skill before, because it's not like technical skills is a hard skill.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? Because as Venus was saying, technical skills are the ones that are actually easily teachable, because you can take a class and learn technical skills and just get better and better at it and perfect it. But the I don't even know what to call it. The interpersonal skills are not as easily teachable. So some of us, or I guess all of us have it within us, but some of us express it more freely than others. And those that, I'm not going to say male or female because I've seen it on both sides really, but those leaders that feel like the interpersonal or the empathetic skills or the compassionate skills are, not really needed, or they feel like they have to kind of suppress that and they can't show it in the workplace, or even vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about, how by you bringing your own vulnerability out, it encourages others to also show, and which is actually the strongest thing you can do, because for you to feel vulnerable and being able to bring out your authenticity in front of someone, that is probably that makes you stronger than anyone else or anything else. So Joyce, I think going back to your question on how do we do things differently in the remote workforce is bringing that out from your team. Like Venus was saying, it's not just about, okay, well, where are you on this task, or do you complete that? It's really really being empathetic and understanding where is your team coming from. Did something happen in their private life? Because you don't know now. Anything could have happened. So if they suddenly start exhibiting a difference in behavior, it's not immediately jumping like, hey, you're usually on time. Like, what's with, lately you haven't been on time. What's up with this? It's kind of like, hey, would you like to talk about, I see a difference, in your usual self. You're just not the same. And then just kind of opening it up little by little. I think your staff, maybe even your colleagues, and maybe even your upper management might start opening up more with you when they see you opening it up to them. And and I would say use the 2-word principle. I think we were talking about that in our last talk, is opening up every meeting with the 2 words that you ask your staff. So it can't be about work. It's 2 words on how you're feeling in that moment. And little by little, I think they'll start opening up more to that, and you'll get to see what's really going on.
That's great. That's great. So we're winding down here. So I have 2 more questions to ask of you. The first is, if you were to talk to your colleagues, what would your fellow CISOs, your fellow CIOs, what would you recommend in this new world order? Anybody can start.
I would tell them to focus on the person. Focus on the individual, that whole person concept that we all talk about. And I think that's what the panel has talked about today. In order to get the job done, I have to make sure that the individual's taken care of at home. And if I am, in tune with the fact that, school is in session, but their children are at home, I need to use whatever HR policies I have at my disposal in my arsenal to be flexible and adaptable for their environment, because that is going to make someone more more productive. When we think about our strategy going forward, we didn't know that this was going to last as long as it has. And so, but now we need to think about coming back. What does that look like as well? So as I think Janet, you said it, we need to think ahead. We need to be proactive, and what happens if this is for the next 3 months or the next 6 months? What does that really mean, kind of for our environment? And so I want to make sure that we pay attention. So I would tell my colleagues to, yes, we have to secure the network. Yes, we have to continue to enable the business. But now I think the priority is we're going to have to focus on our people, because if you take care of the people, they will take care of the mission.
Exactly. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think I would say there are a couple of things. We have experienced fantastic partnership with our private sector partners, with our federal partners over the last few months. It's been phenomenal. People are offering help. People are reaching out. I think that's fantastic. And what that does is builds our trust. And it builds our trust in each other. And that strengthens our partnerships, because we really can't do this alone. So we really need to continue building those partnerships and building our trust. And I think that's going to be key going forward, including our own staff, like Bennett said, absolutely.
So
I would just,
go ahead.
I was just going to make one final point. I think, if we're talking about sort of, this transferring into this COVID environment and working remotely for this period of time, I think, and I hope this is across the board, not just sort of within the CISO role and federal government, but, throughout the world, is, what are some lessons that we're learning about working remotely, right? And what that looks like, because we know, especially here in the DC area, and I used to live in San Francisco Bay Area, commuting, people really are spending a lot of time in their car, and that's very stressful. And on a number of dimensions, if you're, you may not take a job in the government because it's too expensive to live here, because to live here you have to live far away. Well, in a remote world, we can hire talent wherever we can find it, right? So I think it would be tragic if we didn't sort of think about what lessons can we learn here, and let's really make some changes to how we were before this all happened. There has to be some good that comes out of this. And collaboration too, the type of tools, the new things we're learning about language, about what people's needs are. There's a lot of focus on diversity now, which is great. And the best solutions and the best organizations, they bring the ideas and the feelings and the intelligence of a broad spectrum of people, of different genders and cultures and stuff. And we need to really, really do that. And then the sticky piece, which is what people would call soft skills, but I think it's actually a hard skill, is that inclusiveness. So you can build diversity, but the impact that you have on an organization, and when you're building creative solutions that we need for the future, you have to include those ideas and really make it actionable. And that's really hard to do, because there's a lot of dynamics. We know when in these online environments, I see it in my children, half the kids don't turn their video on. And if they turn the video on, they don't say anything. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Fenton, turn your video on. Fenton, say something. Tell your teacher hello, I think there's still that with adults, right? So, and that takes leadership from the top too. So I would say as leaders in our organizations, what are some of those strategies and goals and priorities that we put on really building inclusion within our organizations? Because I think, again, that's going to help us build better solutions and the CISO role in particular, create more robust cyber programs.
Great. And what would you tell industry? Industry is out there. They can't come see you. They can't, so.
It's hard.
What would you tell industry? How do they engage with you since they can't, do a face-to-face, and I know meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's hard to get on your calendars, what should, besides being, doing your research, which we all know, and you don't come asking, so what do you do, and that kind of thing. So, what would you recommend to industry? How to continue to engage with you? Jyoti, why don't we start with you?
Oh, I don't think I've seen any lack of engagement by industry.
Okay.
I still get like
Good.
at least 20 emails a day from vendors. Do
My
you have
gosh.
15 minutes of time? Do you, and, and so I haven't seen really a downtick in vendors contacting at least me through LinkedIn and also through NIH email. But my standard response has always been like, well, I think when we actually need a service or tool or professional services, we'll seek them. Like we're not really looking to entertain every single conversation with every single vendor per se, but I haven't really seen a downtick in that, just from my own experience.
Okay. Anybody else?
From my perspective, I do vendor management, and just as I did when it was in person, I still hold meetings with vendors, and it's all based on my strategy. There's an IT strategy that, of course, I build and implement a cybersecurity implementation plan that ties to that. And so I'm constantly looking within my environment to understand that I'm actually maximizing my current environment. And if there is a gap in my capability, then I'll seek that out. And so I interact with vendors a lot because I like to build a library, so to speak, of capabilities. So when the need arises, I have that research available. And I still do it the same way as I always have. We have the 30-minute meetings or the 45 minutes with vendors, through my special assistant, and so that I can just keep abreast on where companies are going with their strategy, those that are already in the USD environment and those that understand the need and the vision of USD as well, because our mission is broad, as is my other CISOs on the panel. So we all need different things at different times. So when you're a vendor coming in, you have to have a good, deep understanding of our mission and what we need. And like you say, have done your homework to say, hey, I recognize in your strategy, you're going here. And this is what I have, and this is what we offer. And I have a frank conversation about it. And so to Jyoti's point, I don't think there's been a downtick in vendor engagement. I just think we engage differently as we do with everyone else in our day-to-day lives.
Great. Okay, we're going to close it out with one more question. Tell me something that nobody else knows about you, or an activity that you're involved in, something that you do that would be a surprise to other people. I'll start off. I was trained as a classical pianist. I played from the time I was 8 years old until I came out of graduate school, and I was in the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, and I played piano.
Impressive.
Very cool.
I wanted to play drums. The compromise was my mother said no drums in my house, so that was with the piano. Okay, Janet, why don't you start?
Well, I told you that all of it started long ago when I was just a kid and liked to solve things. Like I said, I believe Perry Mason especially, oh my goodness, did want to be an attorney because of him. But that said, I really enjoy solving puzzles, and I garden. Gardening is my hobby all the time.
Wow.
A year-round garden. It makes me get out and be outside. So that's one of my passions. I usually grow seeds grow things from seeds that I saved from the previous year.
Oh, wow.
And it's
Nice.
really rewarding to see it all come to life. And
Wow.
my pollinator garden this year was fantastic. It was
Cool.
Fabulous, fabulous. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I'll go next. Something interesting about me. I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin, and my sister works for the Federal Reserve Board. And we live a mile apart from each other, and we cause so much confusion going to the grocery store. We've had kids like stair steps, like one year after the other. So we're in the same schools. So it's quite it can get quite amusing sometimes when somebody just comes up to you and starts hugging you, and you're like, ah, you might know my sister, and having that kind of conversation. Yeah, so that's one interesting thing about me. So if any of you see me out there and I don't say hi, it's because it's my sister, and her name rhymes with mine. Her name's Terry.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, that is
Jesse?
pretty cool.
Yeah.
My story is not as cool as having a garden nor being a twin. So, but I will tell you, I went to a vocational high school and I wanted to be a stenographer or a court reporter. And I was part of the FBLA club, Future Business Leaders of America, and I would compete in shorthand competitions. So I was going to be a stenographer. Then I joined the military and it changed my entire trajectory. And you're right.
That is cool.
Cool. Yeah. Josie?
All right, yes, I'm last. So I know most of you know I am a health and wellness practitioner and coach. But in addition to that, outside of my CISO role, I am also a dance director. So I've been dancing since the age of 3, I'm a professional dancer, and then now I kind of figured, like, probably no one wants to see me dancing anymore, so I started teaching kids. And so now, until the moms started complaining because they kind of wanted to be part of it and they wanted me to teach them. So I now, teach the moms that are that have kids in my dance school. And we actually perform at WNBA and NBA halftime shows.
Oh,
Cool.
When they
That
used to
is
exist.
cool. Oh, well, yeah. There you go. Yes, yes, yes.
So I'm looking forward to the time where we can go back to basketball shows so we can perform again.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great. And we'll be tuning in so we can see you.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Well, ladies, thank you very much. This has been an absolutely great opportunity. I didn't get to half of the questions that came in, but we really do appreciate your time and your effort and your service to our country. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the morning.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.